That's impressive. All right, some of you guys that have some years on me outdid me because I'm pretty lame when it comes to New Year's. I think I made it till 9 o'clock. I really did. I tried. My son, I think I took my son as a key that it was okay for me to fall asleep because we were all going to stay awake. And then we're sitting there, I was telling Bible class, you know what we did? Because we don't have cable. We just sit around and watch YouTube videos of animals, funny animals. And my kids were laughing hysterically until one of them wasn't, and it was my son. So he fell asleep around 9, and I said, well, I'm going to bed too. And my daughter and my wife, they made it till midnight. My wife is the fun one. Believe it or not, guys, I'm not the fun one, right? You think I was. But she is the fun one, and she took one for the team that she does every year. So I'm very thankful that I have a wife that does that. Anyway, I hope you guys all had a great and festive weekend with the ones that you love and the people that you enjoy being around. Well, it is that time of year again, right? New Year's, a time, I might add, that has been celebrated since the most ancient civilizations that we have record of. We've talked about the ancient Mesopotamians in our Bible studies before, but they celebrated festivities for several days at the beginning of their new year. It was called Akitu. And so from our earliest times, humans have been excited about the idea of a new year. It's a time where humans have looked to having a new beginning. Did you have a crummy new year last year? Hey, it's a new year. You can start over and try again. I tell my students, did you do not so well last semester? Well, hey, guess what? It's a new semester. Everybody starts off with an A again. And I had this one student years ago, and they told me they didn't do so well the first semester of my class. And they told me at the very beginning of the second semester, they said, Lohan, new year, new me. All right, and they said that. And I said, oh, okay. And then every time I would see them slacking, they'd be like, hey, new year, new you? And they'd be like, yep, new year, new me. And they said that all the year. They ended up passing the class. But maybe not as good as they could have done. But anyway, we feel like that. There's something about this time of year, and it has been like that since the oldest civilizations, where many of us really do look to this time of year to start over and try again. Many people make New Year's resolutions, right? I was reading a study that was done within the last several years, and it said 41% of Americans actually make New Year's resolutions. Some of the top resolutions include, of course, exercising more, eating healthier, drinking less alcohol, managing stress better, and then others are like doing career-oriented things. But of those 41% that make resolutions, this study said only 9% at the end of the year feel like they've accomplished their resolution. Now, I am not a New Year's resolution kind of person. I have made them before, but I usually fizzle out a few months. Sometimes I've made it maybe halfway through the year, and then I'm like, I'm good. One time, guys, I gave up soda. And I remember, it was great. I think I lost 10 pounds by changing nothing but giving up soda. And, it was really good. I felt really great. And then when it became around time for summertime, I was like, I'm going to have a Diet Coke. And that reopened the door to all of that. So my zeal kind of fizzles out. But I don't want to dissuade you from making New Year's resolutions because you know what? We're all different. I can't stay up till midnight. Some of you guys can. We're all different. So don't let me talk you out of New Year's resolutions. Maybe some of you have a stronger willpower than I do. As a matter of fact, I would bet most of you, in many ways, probably have a stronger willpower than me, especially if you put me in the same room with any of Deb's foods. But rather than give you a traditional list of things that we usually make resolutions about, this morning, I would like to give you some suggestions, and not me, but I would like the Apostle Paul to give us some suggestions about some different New Year's resolutions, all right? So if you'd like to turn with me in your Bibles, our passage of Scripture this morning is going to be from Ephesians chapter 4. Now, we've talked about Ephesians a lot in our Bible studies, pretty much. But if you remember, Ephesus, this place that Paul's writing, is the place that we've talked about in our University of Revelation, that had the temple to the three Roman emperors in the marketplace. It was a large and diverse city. It contained temples to other gods, like the Greek god Zeus. It contained the temple to Artemis. And Paul had been to Ephesus. If you read the book of Acts, Paul actually made a journey to Ephesus. And then he was back, and now he's in prison. So when he's writing the book of Ephesians, he's writing it from prison. And as with every epistle, he is encouraging whatever church he's writing to, whether it's Corinth or Ephesus or Colossae or any of those, he's encouraging them about good things that all Christians should do, but he's also giving them very specific instructions depending on the struggles that they face. So anyway, a little bit of context, all right? So beginning in chapter 4, Paul is writing and instructing Christians in Ephesus to strive for unity, be unified. And it's something that we've learned about in church before. And if you make it all the way down to verse 17, this is where we're going to start. Okay? So in verse 17, Paul says this: "Now this I affirm and insist on in the Lord. You must no longer walk as the Gentiles walk in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of their ignorance and hardness of heart. They have lost all sensitivity and have abandoned themselves to licentiousness, greedy to practice every kind of impurity." That is not what you learn. That is not the way you learn Christ. For surely you heard about him, and you were taught him as truth is in Jesus, to put away your former way of life, your old self, corrupt and deluded by its lusts, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to clothe yourself with the new self, created according to the likeness of God, in true righteousness and holiness. So then, putting away all falsehood, let each of you speak the truth with your neighbor, for we're all members of one another. Be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and do not make room for the devil. Those who steal must give up stealing. Rather, let them labor, doing good work with their own hands, so as to have something to share with the needy. Let no evil talk come out of your mouth, but only what is good, for building up, as there is need, so that your words may give grace to those who hear. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, with which you were marked with the seal for the day of redemption. Put away from you all bitterness and wrath and anger and wrangling and slander, together with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ has forgiven you." Now, if you are looking for some New Year's resolutions, wow, here are some things that we can all work on. So let's start off with Paul's first idea. All right, this is going to be the don't. All right, in the new year, Paul tells Christians not to walk as the Gentiles walk. Okay, because he says the Gentiles, the Gentiles represent literally the people that were non-Jewish, but also they represent those who are not called by God. All right? He says that they walk by the futility of their own minds, and they're darkened in their understanding, and they're alienated from the life of God because of their hard hearts and their ignorance. What Paul is saying here is that the Gentiles follow their own human understanding rather than God's. And that made me think of, many of you guys probably know this, Proverbs 14:12. It says, "There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death." Right? Sometimes we think we know what the right way as humans, but that ends very badly, right, when we follow ourselves. So those who are not following God are walking in darkness and in the futility and weaknesses of their own understanding. And what happens when people do this? Well, Paul says that the Gentiles abandon themselves to impurity and licentiousness, And licentiousness is just a big word that means overt sinfulness of many different kinds. Okay? So they're basically abandoning themselves to their bottom desires. And they're giving themselves over to anything they want, whether it's harmful or not. And you know what this got me thinking? If Paul is reminding Christians that they are not to be like the rest of the world, you know what? That means that Christians in Ephesus were probably falling right back in to that way of life, right? If he's warning them about not being like it, that means that some of them were probably doing that. And you know what? It's easy for us to do the same thing. You know, on Sunday evenings we studied the problems in the first century church, right? And we discovered that they had a lot of the same problems that we have today, whether it's greed, immorality, divisions, judging, racism. We too, as Christians today, can fall back into the habits of the world, and we can give into our desires, and we can become controlled by them, just as Paul was warning Christians at Ephesus. And I think sometimes, as Christians, we think we're immune to such things. But we're not. We are just as susceptible. And Paul reminds the Christians at Ephesus, I like what he says here, he says, "That's not the way you learn Christ!" Exclamation point. He's like yelling, "You know better! You didn't learn that!" Right? He's saying you know better. And he further reminds them to put away that old self that was corrupted and diluted by its own lusts, and clothe themselves with that new self that was created in the righteousness of God and holiness. All right? I like how Paul uses the analogy of clothing. He does it here and he does it elsewhere in his letters. But he uses this analogy of clothing. You know, sometimes, often actually, as humans, our clothing and our behavior kind of go together, right? If we're going to a formal dinner, we dress really well. We might have a tuxedo, right? And we're going to behave a little differently when we're wearing that tuxedo, right? For years, I would wear nothing to school as a teacher but a shirt and tie. Because, number one, it made me behave differently. And number two, people look at you differently when you've got a shirt and tie if you're a teacher. All right? But we behave according to our dress. If you go to the gym and work out, you dress differently, right? I might throw on some Nike shorts, a t-shirt, and I behave differently because I'm dressed differently, right? When I was a young man, I used to go to a lot of rock concerts when I was really young. And in the 80s, you would wear like, I was really young in the 80s. In the 80s, you would wear like ripped up jeans and t-shirts. And you would go behave in a cool, I don't know, but you would go behave that way, right? But the bottom line is, your behavior and your dress go hand in hand, right? And Paul is saying the same thing. He's telling the Christians at Ephesus, they took off those old clothes that they used to wear when they engaged in behaviors unlike Christ. And those clothes that they wore before they became Christians, he said, that's the clothes you used to wear, right? And he's saying, don't go put those clothes back on. You're not doing those things anymore. Instead, put on the new clothes of the new self. The ones that they put on, as Paul said in Galatians, when they clothed themselves in baptism, they clothed themselves with Christ. He says, wear those clothes. Don't put on those old clothes. You get the new clothes on, and you keep them on. You're not like that anymore. So one of the things that we can resolve to do in 2023 is to make sure that we strive to keep ourselves apart from the behaviors of the world. And we can strive to keep the right kind of clothes on and not go back to put on those old clothes that we used to wear. That's a good resolution. Well, what are some other things that we can resolve to do? Well, Paul gives us a lot of other good ideas too. First, Paul tells us that we can put away all falsehoods and speak truth to our neighbors. As Christians, we need to pursue truth because we are all members of one another. Why would we lie to ourselves? That's not good, right? Don't lie to other people. You wouldn't lie to yourself. We're all members of the same body. So, Paul tells us to put away falsehoods. We need to be honest. He also says we need to be angry and do not sin. Furthermore, he says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. Now remember, we've talked about angry before, okay? Anger before. It's normal to be angry. It's okay to be angry. It's not healthy to be angry. But humans get angry. It's a normal reaction to things. But we need to control our anger and don't let our anger make us go to the point of we are sinning against God. Was Jesus angry? A couple times, yeah, sure. He got frustrated with people, right? Were the apostles angry? Clearly. They use exclamation points sometimes when they're writing to their churches that they're talking to. So, anger is not bad. Sinning, having that anger cause you to sin, is where it gets into a dangerous area. And I know anger is really a hard emotion to control. I get it, all right? But if we can control it, if we can make an effort, that will make us better. Next, Paul encourages Christians to not make room for the devil. This is really interesting, all right? And this kind of like hit me. I don't have a picture of you, though. This weekend I did something crazy. Let me kind of backtrack here. I've been clearing out my attic, all right? I've been boarding up the floors for the first time, and I've lived there for 6 years. And I actually bought an attic ladder. You guys ever see the Christmas Vacation where Clark Griswold pulls out the attic ladder and the ladder smacks him right in the face? Well, I bought one of those, all right? And it doesn't slide out and smack me in the face. It folds up. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I bought an attic ladder so that I can now climb up into the attic and store things, all right? It's been really great. Now, if my past is any indication of my future, let me tell you what happens when I clean up my garage, okay? Although I've never had an attic ladder leading up to the place where I can store things, I clean up my garage and I do it several times a year. All right, several times. And you know what? The fact that I have to do it several times shows you kind of the situation that I get in, which is I clean it out and I say, man, all right, it's clean. And guess what I do? I put more junk in it. And within about 3 months, it's crowded in with junk and trash. But I cleaned it out so I wouldn't have to deal with that. But 3 months later, it's got junk and trash in. All right? So I make room for more junk to later have to clean it out again. So now, hopefully, I have a boarded up attic, I've installed the ladder, and I've made room so I can put things in right order, neatly, and efficiently. That's the idea. I'll let you know in about March, all right, how that's going. Okay? I don't have my hopes up. But anyway. But that's the point. I think we as Christians sometimes do the same thing. We make room in our hearts, but we clutter it up with junk, right? And that junk can be something different to all of us. Maybe we put ourselves in situations that make room for evil or junk. You know, the first century Christians we talked about in the different letters, I can't remember what letter it was, but they kept going to these idol feasts, even though they were Christians. They would go with their friends to these feasts with idols. Now, they knew idols weren't real. They knew there was only one God. But they were warned, hey, don't do that. You're making room for bad things. And I think sometimes we put ourselves, maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, in bad situations as Christians. And we make room for evil. Maybe we spend far more time pursuing entertainment than we do pursuing the will of God. Maybe we place a higher value on watching the latest Netflix series than we do on studying the Bible. I know that I myself have been guilty of really getting into entertainment and loving entertainment and neglecting other parts of my life. I'm guilty of it. And there's nothing wrong with entertainment, but sometimes entertainment makes room for something other than God. So Paul's reminding Christians, don't make room for evil in their lives. Don't clutter up your life with junk. And next, Paul tells Christians something interesting. If you steal, stop stealing. He tells Christians, hey, if you guys are stealing stuff, don't steal anymore. All right? Instead of stealing, check this. Work, make your own living, so that you have something to share with others. You know, we've studied in the past about how humans were made by God to do what? You guys remember? To work. What happened right when God put Adam in the garden? What did he say go do? Go work in the garden, right? Okay, don't sit there. Don't do nothing. Go work, right? We talked about how in Ecclesiastes, the writer of Ecclesiastes spoke of work as a gift from God. So, I would bet nobody in here is a thief, but I think one thing we can all do better is, work for a living and share something with other people. That's interesting that that is added. We talked about kind of God putting people to work, and we talked about how work is a gift, but Paul adds, we work so that we can make money or make a living, and then what do we do with that living? Share it with others. We give, right? That is the core of Christianity, to share with others and to give. But you can't give what you don't have, right? So Paul is saying, look, don't steal stuff, work. And when you make money, give that to people. Share with people. And you know what? We do a lot of that in this church. I said last week, I'm really proud of the things that you guys do. We share meals with each other. And we share meals with those in our community. Remember during Thanksgiving, we shared dozens of meals with those in need. And that was a good thing. We shared gifts and things that people needed for families during Christmas. Now we're getting ready to have a community giveaway. These are all great examples of using what we have to give to others. But I'll bet we can all work on sharing with others in need a little bit more. And that's what Paul is telling Ephesians Christians to do. Work, earn a living, and share with others. Well, wait, there's more. Resolution. So, Paul instructs Christians in Ephesus to not let any evil talk come out of their mouths, but instead only talk about things that build each other up. Paul is telling them and us that our words should give grace to those who hear. As Christians, we need to make sure our speech is helpful to others and not harmful to others. Like controlling our anger. I know this is a tough one, isn't it? Jesus told his followers that it's not what goes into a man that corrupts him. What did he say? It's what comes out of a person that defiles them. And he was talking about that as referring to the dietary practice of the Jews rather than what comes out of a man, right? And what did James say about the tongue? It's a dangerous fire that can consume us and control us. There's a reason why we are warned countless times in the New Testament about the dangers of the things that we say. And I know in the past, I have struggled with not only my anger, but also controlling my tongue. So that's one more thing that we can focus on. Controlling and doing in the new year. And finally, Paul encourages Christians at Ephesus to put away bitterness, to put away their wrath, their wrangling, their slandering, all malice. Put all that away. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted. Look at that last one. Forgiving of each other, as Christ forgave us. Wow. There is a list of New Year's resolutions for Christians. And if you think about it, they're pretty much in line with what people resolve to do every year. Why do we become unhealthy and stressed? Because we do exactly what Paul warned Christians in Ephesus not to do. We abandon ourselves to our pleasure. We follow our own desires. We make room for the devil. We all do these things, right? We keep trying to put those old clothes on sometimes that we used to wear before we were Christians. So when Paul gives us these ideas of good behavior, these make great resolutions for us to follow. Now, if you guys want to try to give up, soda for a year, do it. All right? That's not going to work for me. Okay? If you want to give up, chocolate cakes for a year, that's not going to work for anybody here because dead. All right? But do it. Try it. Okay? I'm not saying don't do those things. But if we really want to make ourselves better people, all right? And as I do, I think we should all strive, to work on ourselves every single day of our life. All right? I told you guys, I believe that we are intended to struggle until the day we die, as far as struggle with making ourselves better, making ourselves more knowledgeable. So guys, I think if we want to make some New Year's resolutions this year, why not make them based on Paul's suggestions in Ephesians 4? So in 2023, what can we do with this? Let's all resolve, number one, to be different from the world. All right? different things to different people, guys. What's going to be different from the world? But it means that we're not going to go put on those old clothes again. All right? We're not going to behave the way that we did before we became Christians. Right? We're going to behave the way that we know we should. Right? We're going to behave the way that we learned Christ. Number 2, let's all resolve to speak truth to each other. All right? Speaking truth is kind of interesting. I know sometimes we as humans, especially politicians, but everybody can speak in truth in a very deceitful way. Let's get rid of all that deceit. Speak the truth. All right? I found out a long time ago. If you speak the truth, whatever punishment you're going to get, you get it over with, and you rip the Band-Aid off, and it's over. But if you don't speak the truth, you have to deal with it, and you have to think about it, and you have to dwell in you, and you have to have all this guilt, right? So, I would do bad things when I was younger. I would be like, yeah, I did it. And just get it over with. But I didn't have to deal with all that guilt. And I'm not saying do that, guys. I'm saying let's speak truth. Okay? Speak the truth. Number 3, let's all resolve in 2023 that we are going to control our anger. We're going to not let it cause us to sin. We're going to do our best. All right? Let's resolve in 2023 that we're going to not make room for the devil. We're going to make more room for God. That means something different to everybody. Maybe that means like what Robin is going to have us get together and do. Maybe that means, you know what? I'm going to read the Bible a little bit every night. Okay? And I love this Bible study that Robin has for us. I've always wanted to do it. Where, if you weren't clear, we're going to read the Bible in the chronological order that it was written. Okay? Okay, so we're going to read it, and it's going to kind of make a little more sense in a lot of ways. All right? And then, if you guys want to, on Thursdays, maybe we get together and talk. It's not required. You don't have to. But if you want to, just know that people will be here talking about it. All right? It's fun. But maybe that's something that we can do to make room for God. We can be like, you know what? I'm going to. I normally at this time, I sit on the couch, and I eat a cheeseburger, and I watch a show. You know what? I'm going to take about 45 minutes, and I'm going to read this reading every day. See what happens. All right? But let's make room for God instead of the devil. Number 5, let's all resolve to share more with each other. And like I said, I see this church doing a lot of sharing. That's great. But let's all maybe individually resolve to share more. Number 6, let's resolve to make our speech helpful to others, not harmful to others. Like I said, I know that's tough. All right? But remember, help other people. Don't make things worse. Don't harm. And then finally, let's resolve, guys, to be kind and forgiving. Because who forgave us? Jesus. Did we deserve that forgiveness? Absolutely not. Right? So here's a list of things. If you're looking, I kind of want to try New Year's resolutions. Here's a few things to work on. And if you guys don't think about New Year's resolutions, sometimes people make too many resolutions they can't keep up. Pick one of those. Be like, you know what? I'm going to make room for God. So every day I'm going to read a little bit of the Bible. Maybe I can't read 3 chapters. I'll read 1 chapter of the reading. Maybe I'll read 2. Who knows? Maybe that's what you want to do. Or maybe you want to focus on speaking truth. I'm kind of deceitful. I'm not seeing anything you guys out to. Maybe you're deceitful. Like, sometimes I kind of, to my kids, I say, well, I mean, kind of. And maybe I'm being deceiving. I'll speak the truth. No matter what. Right? Anyway, let's pray. Dear God, we come this time, Lord, and we're thankful for this new year that you've given us, God. And we're thankful that you're allowing us to be here in 2023, Father. And we ask, as we go through this year, that we will make ourselves better. And we will remember to keep making ourselves better, even at times where maybe we don't feel the zeal and the excitement like we do at the beginning of a new year. Lord, please be with us and give us the momentum, give us the spirit, Lord, to continue, even when times get tough, God, to make ourselves better. Dear Lord, we're so thankful for everything that you give us, God. And we ask that you always be with us and you always guide us. Father, thank you. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen. Well, guys, I hope that was useful to give you guys something to think about. As always, it is the tradition of the Church of Christ to offer what we call the invitation, which is simply a time where you can come forward when we sing a song here in a second and tell us if you're going through something or if you need the prayer but it's also that time where you can do what Paul suggested Christians do in Galatians 3. If you are living like the world and you want to change your life, you want to make that next step, and you want to put on those new clothes like Galatians says and clothe yourself with Christ in baptism. Well, the invitation is also open for you to do that. But if you have any needs, please don't hesitate to come as we stand and sing this song.